So I just watched the first episode of She-Hulk, Attorney at Law. And what did I think? Stay tuned. Hi guys, it is me, and I have just sat down, had a nice glass of the old Stella Artois, and watched She-Hulk, Attorney at Law. It actually caught me by surprise. I hadn't expected it to come out so quickly, but I was kind of excited to watch it because I've enjoyed a lot of the Marvel shows. I kind of had Marvel burnout for a bit, but I thought Miss Marvel was really fun, and I was kind of looking forward to all the new stuff. So She-Hulk, yeah, here we go. It's arrived, and I watched it. And you know what? I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. Cheers to, I can't remember who wrote it, Catherine Go, I think, something like that. But it was a very enjoyable, short, exciting, interesting, funny show. And I think they hit the right tone with it because, I still haven't watched Moon Knight all the way through because it was quite heavy. And Miss Marvel was kind of nice because it was a bit lighter, and this is light as well. It's easy to get into. And I think as a Marvel fan, to go into the first episode of She-Hulk and have like Bruce Banner, the Hulk in his Hulk form there, driving that first episode, really helps you get invested very, very quickly. So you probably know it's basically about She-Hulk, about how Bruce's cousin became a female version of the Hulk, the She-Hulk. And she's also a lawyer. So we're going to have like a legal drama, except she can turn into a monster every so often. Except she can control it. Which is kind of one of the few things I didn't quite like about the first episode of the She-Hulk. I really, really enjoyed it. I thought it was funny. I thought it was fast-paced. I thought all of the cast was brilliant in it. I will say with the writing, there were some parts I really, really liked, and some parts I thought were a little heavy-handed. And a lot of that, I think, comes to the idea. I know people are always going on about, oh, this show is woke or whatever, but She-Hulk, Attorney at Law had something really meaningful to say about what it is like to be a high-achieving woman in society. And there were lots of bits of dialogue, and these aren't the bits that I think were heavy-handed. Lots of bits of dialogue, like Bruce says, your transformation into the She-Hulk is going to be triggered by anger and fear. And she's like, well, that's basically the level set of every single woman ever existing. Which I think is a valid thing. I think it's kind of cool that they wrote something like that and put it in this because, yeah, finally, women are actually being able to write about what it is like to be a high-achieving woman in society and the pressure that you get put under. And there are other aspects of it there where she goes on about she has to control that angle all the time because she's a lawyer, and therefore, when she has somebody mansplaining something to her, and she didn't use the word mansplaining, but, I think it was an incompetent man explaining something from my area of expertise. That makes her angry, and then various other things that are relevant to being a woman in modern society. And that, I didn't think that was heavy-handed. I actually thought that was great. I respected that, and I kind of liked the fact that it was completely written in a very frank approach. It's like, we're making a show about the Hulk and she's a lawyer, but hey, let's talk about something. Let's talk about something that is relevant to many women's experiences, and we'll just put it in there explicitly. And I like that. I think that works. The heavy-handed part of it to me was just the way they laid on about how quickly she became better than the Hulk. I mean, it started right out of the bat when she wakes up in the Hulk's Mexican retreat, and he's studying their DNA or whatever, and she's like, oh, I'm better than you. And he's like, no, you're just different. She's like, sounds like better. And it's like, okay. And then she masters being able to control her emotions instantly. She masters being able to jump and balance and do the Hulk clap and stuff instantly. She's always better at the Hulk at all of these things. And that was the part I kind of thought was laid on a bit too thick. And I think it was the wrong approach to take. I think it would have been better if they had a certain amount of like getting to understand your Hulk powers and a certain amount of Bruce teaching her things, because otherwise she comes across as that that thing that has become like the absolute black mark in all female characters, a Mary Sue. And I disagree that a lot of female characters in various things are Mary Sues. I don't think Rey from the Star Wars sequels was a Mary Sue. In this particular instance, though, it just rubbed me a little bit the wrong way about how she was just perfect at everything right off the bat. And I think taking that approach kind of diluted the effectiveness of where they had mentions of like real issues and real situations that will resonate with professional women in the modern day. It's like that was something I found really refreshing when they wrote about that and had bits of dialogue about that. And the problem is having like such a kind of Mary Sue element to how quickly she mastered her powers, I think is going to rub people up the wrong way, and then that is going to a certain extent make them dismiss all of the cool relevant stuff that I thought was in the dialogue. I mean, that's just my opinion of it. If you disagree with that, leave a comment down below, let me know. But I think there is a balance to these things. It's like No Time to Die, the latest James Bond movie. They had the character of Nomi in there, who was the new 007. And I know they built it up in the press with this big controversial thing. It's like, oh, 007 is now a black woman. And of course she wasn't. And when you had the movie, the character of Nomi was brilliantly written and brilliantly portrayed by Letitia Lynch. And it had everything about it. She was a strong, brilliant, competent character. And yet she didn't even have to be deferential to Bond. But during that movie, she learned to respect Bond and learned from him. Whereas, so that I thought was just a brilliantly written character, and made her inclusion in it like a really strong addition. Whereas I think with the whole thing in She-Hulk, where she's just brilliant right from the get-go, it's kind of a bit much, because you're not brilliant at everything right from the get-go. And I think that's it. The problem that a lot of female characters have in the way they're written in this day and age is it's almost like there's this pressure for them to be brilliant from the get-go, to be better than men from the get-go. It's almost like this pressure to avoid having what is such an important part of most male-led narrative, which is developing the skills and earning the power and stuff like that. If you look at, the hero's journey, Joseph Campbell's like writing circle, which has been used for like Star Wars and Lord of the Rings and stuff like that, it's all about a character realizing their shortcomings and having to grow into who they are actually destined to be, and then make a sacrifice and then become who they finally end up as. I think one of the flaws with the way a lot of female characters are written these days, in an effort to make quote-unquote strong female characters, is they don't have that progression, that character growth. It's like they don't want to write a female character who is vulnerable and wrong and makes mistakes and has to learn from them to become who they're destined to be, because I think for some reason people perceive writing a character who makes mistakes, is flawed and has a need to grow, makes them appear weak. If you're writing a quote-unquote strong female character, you don't want them to appear weak. But the problem is that is the most quintessential and important part of any story. And this is why, Captain America, the First Avenger as an MCU movie works brilliantly, whereas Captain Marvel as an MCU movie doesn't. Because in Captain Marvel, she's like perfect and flawless right from the very get-go. Then she finds out some more stuff about her and she becomes even more perfect and flawless. Whereas Steve Rogers is this weak, feeble guy who undergoes this transformation, and then he still has to earn his right to be in the battlefield because he gets sent off into the USO tours first, and then once he has that, then he makes a sacrifice, and that's how he becomes Captain America. It's like, that is a really powerful origin story. Miss Marvel isn't such a powerful origin story because she doesn't have to go through that growth. And that's the thing with She-Hulk. I think that is an area of the story that they could have done better. It's not bad, but I really think they could have done better. They could have done made her a little bit more vulnerable as she learns to become the Hulk. So we'll see. This is only the first episode, but I think people are becoming more critical of the way stories are told and the way characters are presented, and I think we're all becoming a little more cynical. So, I think the MCU has to be careful about the approach they take with that, because they want to write about characters, real characters. You don't want to make them archetypes. And that's the problem with this whole quote-unquote strong female character. You have the risk of making them appear almost like caricatures, because you don't give them the safety net of being able to be vulnerable and learn and develop and grow. And that's what a character is, and that's what a character needs. And ironically, there are so many brilliantly written female characters who go through all of that. Miss Marvel, totally 100%. That show was brilliantly written. As far as the female protagonist goes, she was perfect. So yeah, that's my thought on She-Hulk. Right, I'll wrap this up. It was very nice to chat to you all. If you haven't seen it, I think it's only about 30 minutes, the first episode, so that's nice, because you don't have to make this big hour-long commitment. And it's also kind of a self-contained story, so you're not I think that's the problem with Moon Knight, hour-long episodes, and there's all sorts of lore you have to learn, whereas She-Hulk is oh, she's a Hulk and she's a lawyer. You can get into that. I think that's something they did very well. Anyway, I'll wrap it all up. Until next time, cheerio.
I'm Roland Hume. I've sold 67,000 copies of my books. If you want to find out how I did it, I've got the link right here you can click. And otherwise, don't forget to subscribe. I've got more videos coming soon. Thank you.